Okay, good morning. So, what I wanted to talk about this morning uh, comes from a piece of teaching that we've been talking about for a while. Um, there was this quote from Sylvia Boorstein about mindfulness. And the quote, which I don't have in front of me, unfortunately, but basically said that mindfulness is paying attention to what's occurring internally and externally at this moment. And that knowing what's occurring in this moment is dependent on the mind state that you bring to that moment. So I've been telling this story of Harvey, uh, which is just the story of how the exact same circumstance, the exact same situation can be completely different, but depending on the mind state you're bringing into that situation. So if you're feeling great and an event occurs, the event may seem great. And if you're feeling terrible and an event occurs, you may see the event as annoying and difficult and just one more thing to deal with. Dependent on the mind state that you're bringing with you into any kind of an experience, any kind of encounter with another person, with a task, with the day. Knowing the mind state that you're bringing in is really, 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 really so very useful. So, what I wanted to talk about this morning is, well, what are the factors that lead to the development of the mind state that you're bringing into a situation? How does that come about? So, every new experience, every experience you're having, the one you're having at this moment, the experience itself is dependent on your senses, right? If you couldn't hear, if you couldn't see, if there were no sensations in the body, no feelings in the heart, no nothing, well, it wouldn't be an experience. It would be blank. It is only through the senses that we experience what's occurring. Well, the senses are part of the body. They are the body. They are the the contact part of the body with experience, with whatever's occurring, with whoever's there, whatever's there. The part of the body that makes contact are the senses. How the body feels, how the body is positioned, its location, um, and sort of the sense we have of this is the body. The body is like this. That sense we have of the body is funny because we only know the body through the senses. And yet, body, a reflection of the sense feels light and pleasant, then the senses will naturally also be feeling light and pleasant because they are the body, compacted and disconnected and unpleasant. I can see there's more entertainment this morning than usual. The experience of having a body, the experience of having a body, the experience itself is dependent on the mind. Because without the perceptual system and without the understandings and memories of everything that has ever occurred before, um, the experience of the body would just be, well, it would be what it is. It would not have labels and names. We would not have an explanation and a story without the mind. If I say, you know, my hip hurts, saying my hip hurts is a product of the mind, even if I'm saying it to myself. Even if there's no language, even if there's just the perception of hip hurting, the perception is the mental process. To know the body, knowing is a mental process. The knowing is consciousness. That to actually experience the state of the mind and the body, you have to be conscious of it. There is no experiencing the body and the mind without consciousness. A good example, if someone is unconscious, they have no idea what's going on with their body and their mind. Very simple. Um, an example I use a lot is imagine that you're reading a book and you get so absorbed in the story. Um, oh, this happens a lot. You don't realize the position your body is in, and at some point, you realize you'd be away, or and you're like, "How did my body get into this pretzel?" Well, I was reading. Well, it's because you weren't conscious of the body. Your consciousness was completely absorbed into the reading. I guess that probably happens commonly in movie theaters, where you get absorbed in the story, in the picture, in the movie, and your awareness that you're sitting in a seat in a theater with a whole bunch of other people might disappear entirely. Because what you're conscious of is the movie, not the body, not mental processes. Is so incredibly important because everything you experience is dependent on what it is that you're conscious of. If you're not conscious of, um, the temperature on your skin and how it's affecting your body, you can be doing something and then suddenly at some point you go, oh God, I'm freezing. It came up to you surprisingly because, oh, right, you weren't conscious of the effect. This is a tremendously wide field. Huh. Oh, there we go. What I really like is after the Zoom shuts down and it comes back, everybody's in a different position. And it's like a whole new world. So one thing that is incredibly important is the recognition that you have some agency over what it is that you are conscious of, that you can choose. And of course, we do this all the time. We're choosing what we're conscious of. You know, you could be sitting here in this group and, you know, your phone dings and your consciousness of sitting here in this group shifts to being conscious of an incoming text, let's say. Very simple. You know, you could be walking outside and you could be so focused on the songs of the birds and the flying of the birds as you're walking that you're not at all conscious of the texture of the path that you're walking on. Or you could be so focused on the texture of the path that you're not at all conscious of, you know, the pattern of the leaves as they're richly filled out in this season. Dependent on consciousness is the experience of the mind and the experience of the body. That unless you're conscious, unless there is a knowing that the body is like this, the mind is like this, unless you're conscious of, um, then, well, then you're not conscious of it. It's very simple. And if you're not conscious of an aspect of the mind, if you're not conscious of an aspect of the body, when the senses make contact with some experience, that contact will be dependent, the texture, the flavor, the tone of that contact will be dependent on what you were conscious of coming into that moment. The biggest influence on what we make contact with and how we experience it is consciousness being very narrowly focused or consciousness being somewhat wide open, that you know you're aware of all sorts of things. You know, you're walking down the street and you're aware of other people walking on the street. You're aware of the architecture of the buildings, the feeling of the wind or the air on your skin, the experience of walking itself, the sounds of the people talking and the cars, an airplane flying overhead. You know, there is such a wide field of consciousness that is available. But perhaps as you're walking down the street, you're thinking of something, and you're not at all aware of the sounds of the people and the cars and the airplane, and you're certainly not aware of the architecture of the buildings. You know, you're not aware that you're even walking. The walking is happening automatically because you're, as our expression goes, lost in thought. Not so much lost as just so narrowed down that what you're conscious of is just that. It's very narrow. And so the possibility of being startled increases dramatically because, you know, all that has to happen is, a door opens suddenly as you're walking past a building and someone comes out and you're like, there's a startled reflex because you were in some narrow place. If you were walking along with this completely wide view of the field of consciousness, then the person, the door opening, and the person would just be another part of that experience. And there would likely not be a startle. What is it that causes us to focus widely or narrowly? That we're conscious of a small amount or a large amount? What is it that brings that into being? And the answer is habits. Habits. We have habitual mental formations, habitual physical formations, um, ways that we see ourselves as being me, ways that we habitually interact with the world. Interact with our inner experience, interact with our outer experience. There is, mostly everything we do is habitual, is based on, a long process of developing patterns, of responding, and of seeking experience, responding to the experience, seeking particular experiences. It's mostly habitual. And out of these habits forms the patterns of consciousness, of what we're conscious of. We're habitually conscious of certain things. You might, as an experiment, try this. Maybe a particular way, the way you make breakfast, the way you wash the dishes, the way you need to go to the store to get some stuff, and the way you do that, whether you walk there or whether you get in your car, the whole pattern of how you do that, of where you go, and all the experiences that unfold is probably filled with habitual patterns. And those habitual patterns shape what choices we make to be focused on what aspects of the whole wide field of what we could be conscious of. the habit shape what in fact we are conscious of in this particular moment. And having been shaped um, by those habits, what we're conscious of as this experience of my mind, this experience of my body, is actually now dependent on those habits. This is what my body is like as I go through my routine of the way I make coffee. These are the mental experiences that arise in this habitual process of making coffee. My mind and my body, what I am conscious of, that becomes my experience of mind. What I am conscious of, that becomes my experience of the body, is dependent on the way habits have shaped what I am conscious of. And now, dependent on what I am conscious of in the mind, what I am conscious of in the body, shapes how the senses operate. What is seen is I like these pause moments as an opportunity for reflection. So, what I'm describing is a process that is continually occurring. This process is continually occurring in every moment of your life. This process of the way that all of our life experience has created a pattern of habits. And the way that those habits unfold leads to what we choose to be conscious of. And what we choose to be conscious of then shapes the experience that we have of our own bodies and of our mind. And as the senses are the body and the mind, when the senses make contact and a new experience arises, the very experience itself could only occur in the way it's occurring as a result of those habits. from this is how the experience of two different people walking on a path together. The birds are singing, the leaves are blowing in the wind. Whatever is occurring is occurring. And because people's life experiences are each unique, the contact the senses are having with all that is occurring as we're walking together down this trail, there is such difference. All dependent on the habits that have been acquired. And from those habits, what we choose to be conscious of, and how the consciousness is shaping our experience of body and mind, and how the senses as an expression of the body, as an expression of the mind, makes contact with all the experiences that are occurring, dependent on the habits that we have acquired. So when Sylvia says that mindfulness is paying attention to what is occurring in this moment, internally and externally, and knowing the mind state that we are bringing into this moment of experience, there is a further to go, which is, in essence, knowing some of the habits that are ours that shape how we're conscious of the mind state that appears to be occurring, that appears to be present. Our view of the mind state that is present is habit dependent. And when we know this, we can pause and say, well, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. And then when we choose our response to whatever is occurring in experience, we can choose to follow the sort of the flow that comes from the habit, or we can go against the stream and say, yeah, this is my habitual way of responding to this, dependent on all of these things. Yeah, but I'm not going to do that now. I'm not going to do that now. That's not what I choose. And this is how we develop agency. This is how we develop a tremendous amount of mastery over the choices we make in our lives. By recognizing the habits that begin this process, that ends with how we are responding, how we are reacting to an experience that's occurring. We recognize the habit patterns. And you know, I always love to go with what Thich Nhat Hanh says. He says, when you see the habit pattern, say, oh, hello, my little habit energy. I see you, but you are not me. You are not me. You are not anything other than an opportunity for choice. Do I go and stay in the flow of this habit? Or do I withdraw consent and say, I love you, little habit energy. but you are not me. I'm going to make a different choice. I'm going to choose to do something else. So, as you come into this encounter, you have an encounter with a person, and you're coming to that encounter with a tremendous amount of cranky energy and upset. And you basically want this person that you're encountering to disappear, to not be there, because you don't want to have to deal with this person at all. It has nothing to do with the person. It has to do with what you're bringing with you. You're bringing with you a whole, you know, vast set of patterns and mind states. And the temptation, the habitual temptation, maybe is to snap at the person, or to dismiss the person, or to move around the person, or to ignore the person, all of the different ways that in this place of, I don't want you to be where you are. I don't want to be encountering you right now. All the habitual ways of dealing with that. You say, no, I am dedicated to kindness. I am dedicated to non-harm. I am not going to let this habit pattern, ruled at the moment by all the unpleasant and aversive experience and feeling. No, I'm not going to let that decide for me. And in the encounter with the person, you do whatever is necessary to be kind and to cause no harm. And also to take care of yourself. So you might well say, I'm having a terribly hard time right now. To let them know. This is what is up in consciousness. This is what I'm conscious of. This is what the mind and the body are like. But I'm not going to be dismissive, disrespectful, uncaring. No, I withdraw consent. Instead, in this encounter, I will do my best to sustain internally just an abiding in kindness. An abiding in kindness. So what I would like to do in the sit this morning is really pay attention to how habits shape what it is you are conscious of as you sit, and how those habits shape what it is you actually are experiencing through the senses. And to notice when there is an unkind thought, an unkind feeling, an unkind habit expressing itself, to withdraw consent and say, I am dedicated to kindness. I am going to be conscious of the presence of loving kindness in this very moment. So let's do this.